I'll create a complete 4,000-word story based on your outline and requirements. I'll write it in American English, following the emotional journey structure without using italics, special characters, or the prohibited names. I'll include calls to action as requested and follow all formatting guidelines. I had it all figured out in Seattle. A senior software engineer position at a growing tech company, a beautiful apartment downtown, and Stephanie, my gorgeous marketing executive fiancée. We were 2 months away from our dream wedding in Hawaii. Life was perfect, or so I thought. Then came that Thursday afternoon when I returned early from my business trip with concert tickets in hand. The sounds from our bedroom, the familiar laughter mixed with unfamiliar intimacy. I opened the door to find Stephanie in bed with Jake, my best friend since college. "What are you gonna do, cry?" she mocked. I just smiled and left. Let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how I turned this betrayal into the best decision of my life. When I think back to where it all began, I remember meeting Jake at Portland State University freshman orientation. We clicked immediately over our shared love of coding and basketball. Through 4 years of all-nighters, failed projects, and eventual success, we became inseparable. After graduation, we both landed jobs in Seattle's tech scene and shared an apartment for 2 years before I moved out. Jake was always the more outgoing one, constantly dragging me to networking events and parties. "You spend too much time with your computers, Maxwell," he would say. "You need to meet actual humans sometimes." I reluctantly agreed to attend a holiday party at his marketing firm 3 years ago. That's where he introduced me to Stephanie. She stood out immediately in the crowded room, tall with flowing auburn hair and a laugh that somehow cut through the noise of the party. Jake nudged me forward with a whispered, "She's single and way too smart for most of the guys here." Our conversation that night flowed effortlessly from work to travel to our shared love of obscure indie bands. I left with her number and a fluttering feeling I hadn't experienced before. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. I remember being nervous changing my outfit 3 times before settling on a blue button-down that Jake insisted brought out my eyes. Stephanie arrived in a simple black dress that made my heart race. We talked until the restaurant staff began stacking chairs around us, a not-so-subtle hint it was closing time. The relationship progressed naturally. Weekend getaways to the Oregon coast cooking classes we were both terrible at, and quiet nights streaming documentaries we'd passionately debate afterward. 1 year in, when my lease ended, moving in together felt like the obvious next step. We found a 2-bedroom apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Space Needle that we could just afford if we combined our salaries. Jake remained a constant in our lives, joining us for dinner at least once a week. He dated casually but never seemed to find someone who checked all the boxes, as he put it. I appreciated how he and Stephanie got along so well. "It's important that your partner and best friend can hang out without you," my dad once told me, and I felt lucky to have that. 8 months ago, I proposed at Canla Stephanie's favorite restaurant. I'd been carrying the ring for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. When it arrived with the Seattle skyline twinkling behind us and Stephanie talking animatedly about her latest campaign, I knew this was it. I got down on one knee as the restaurant quieted around us. "Stephanie Miller, you've made the last 2 years the best of my life. Will you marry me?" Her tearful yes and the applause that followed remain one of my happiest memories. Wedding planning consumed our free time. Stephanie had always dreamed of a destination wedding, and we settled on a beachfront ceremony in Maui. Jake agreed to be my best man without hesitation. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, buddy," he said, clapping me on the back. "You hit the jackpot with Steph." My career was advancing in parallel with our relationship milestones. After 5 years at the same company, I was promoted to senior developer with a team under my guidance. The promotion came with more responsibility, including occasional travel for client meetings and presentations. Last week, I flew to San Francisco for what was supposed to be a 3-day conference with a major potential client. I prepared for weeks, knowing this account could mean significant growth for the company. The presentation went even better than expected, and we secured the contract in just 1 day instead of 3. My boss was ecstatic, telling me to take the extra days as compensation time. Instead of telling Stephanie I was coming home early, I decided to surprise her. I stopped by the ticket office and managed to snag 2 front-row seats to the National, her favorite band, who happened to be playing in Seattle that night. I texted Jake about my plan, knowing he'd get a kick out of surprising her. "She's going to flip out, man," he responded. "Can't wait to hear about it." The drive from the airport felt longer than usual, anticipation building with each mile. I stopped at her favorite florist for a bouquet of white lilies and grabbed a bottle of the champagne we'd been saving for special occasions. As I parked outside our building, I rehearsed how I'd surprise her, imagining her expression when I revealed the tickets. I used my key, quietly planning to set the stage before calling out to her. That's when everything changed. The first thing that struck me as wrong was the unfamiliar scent in our apartment, a cologne I couldn't place. Definitely not mine. Then I noticed 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, one with a distinct lipstick mark in Stephanie's signature red. My heart rate quickened as I set down the flowers and champagne, a sense of dread building within me. Then I heard it. Laughter from our bedroom, followed by a sound I recognized but had never expected to hear in this context. Stephanie's distinct giggle, the one reserved for intimate moments between us, but now shared with someone else. I moved toward the bedroom door like a sleepwalker, my body on autopilot, while my mind screamed at me to turn around to walk out to preserve the life I thought I had. But I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. The door wasn't fully closed. A gentle push was all it took to reveal the scene that would forever divide my life into before and after. Stephanie, her auburn hair splayed across our pillows, naked and entwined with an equally naked Jake, my fiancé, my best friend. In our bed, time seemed to stop. The blood rushed to my ears, creating a roaring sound that drowned out everything else. My vision tunneled, focusing with cruel clarity on their intertwined bodies. My stomach lurched as if I'd been punched. I gripped the doorframe to stay upright. It took them several seconds to notice me. Stephanie saw me first, her eyes widening in shock. She pushed Jake away and pulled the sheet up to cover herself. "Maxwell, you're supposed to be in San Francisco." Her voice was high-panicked. Jake turned his face, draining of color. "Maxwell, man, I can explain." But there was nothing to explain. The scene spoke for itself in ways words never could. The betrayal was absolute, comprehensive in its destruction of everything I believed about my life. What happened next was what truly revealed their characters. After the initial shock, Stephanie's expression changed. The panic melted away, replaced by something harder, almost contemptuous. "Well, this is awkward," she said, her tone suddenly casual, as if commenting on a minor social faux pas. "I guess the cat's out of the bag." Jake at least had the decency to look ashamed, scrambling to find his clothes scattered across my bedroom floor. "Maxwell, please let me explain. This isn't what it looks like." Really, I finally found my voice, though I hardly recognized it. "Because it looks like my fiancé and my best friend are having sex in my bed." "It just happened," Jake mumbled, pulling on his pants. "We never meant to hurt you." Stephanie laughed, a cold sound I'd never heard from her before. "Oh, stop with the dramatics, both of you." She sat up, still holding the sheet to her chest, but making no move to get dressed. "What are you going to do, Maxwell? Cry, throw things, call off the wedding?" Her mocking tone cut deeper than the betrayal itself. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a terrible mistake. The woman looking at me now was a stranger, revealing a cruelty I'd somehow never seen in 3 years together. "What, nothing to say?" She pressed when I remained silent. "The great Maxwell Andrews, always so logical and controlled. Come on, freak out, scream, do something interesting for once." I felt an odd calm settle over me then, a clarity I hadn't expected. I looked at them both, these 2 people who had been the center of my world, now revealed as completely different from who I thought they were. "I don't need to do anything," I said quietly. Then, surprising even myself, I smiled. Not a happy smile, but one of recognition. I saw them clearly now, perhaps for the first time. I turned and walked out, closing the door gently behind me. I could hear Stephanie calling after me, her tone changing to one of concern, but I didn't stop. I grabbed my laptop, wallet, and car keys. As an afterthought, I picked up the framed photo of my parents from the living room shelf. Everything else could wait. In my car, I sat for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel before driving to the nearest hotel. My phone started ringing before I reached the lobby. Stephanie's name flashed on the screen. Then Jake's. I turned the phone off. The hotel room was generic, impersonal. I sat on the edge of the bed until the early hours of the morning, replaying years of memories with new context. All those times Jake insisted on staying late at our place. The work trip Stephanie suddenly needed to take. The gradual decrease in intimacy between us that I'd attributed to wedding stress. How long had it been going on? Had anything in my relationship been real? Sleep eventually came in, fitful bursts, my dreams filled with variations of what I'd witnessed. When morning arrived, I turned on my phone to a barrage of notifications. 27 missed calls, 15 voicemails, dozens of text messages from both of them. The first message from Stephanie read, "We need to talk about this. Answer your phone." The next several grew increasingly frantic. "Maxwell, please. It was a mistake. Where are you? Are you okay? Just tell me you're safe." Jake's messages followed a similar pattern, starting with, "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from," and progressing to, "I've been a terrible friend, but please let us know you're okay." I read through them all without responding, then methodically deleted each one. Their concern seemed performative, too little and far too late. Instead of calling them back, I called Thomas, a lawyer friend from college who practiced in Seattle. He agreed to meet me for coffee in an hour. When I arrived, his usual jovial expression was replaced with concern. "You look like hell, Maxwell," he said bluntly. "What happened?" I explained the situation as clinically as possible. Thomas listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes. "I need to know where I stand legally," I concluded. "The apartment is in my name, but we've been splitting the mortgage, the wedding deposits, our joint accounts." Thomas nodded. "Smart to address this immediately. First thing, change your banking passwords and check your accounts. You'd be surprised how often people drain shared finances in these situations." Following his advice, I opened my banking app right there. What I found added another layer to the betrayal. Over the past 3 months, Stephanie had made multiple unexplained withdrawals from our joint savings account, the one earmarked for our honeymoon. Nearly $8,000 was missing. "I also recommend you go through credit card statements," Thomas continued. "If there are cards in your name that she has access to, check for unusual purchases." That evening, in my hotel room, I did exactly that. The discoveries came in waves. Stephanie had been using my credit card for purchases. I knew nothing about designer clothing, expensive restaurants on nights she'd claimed to be working late, even a weekend spa trip charged 2 months ago when she'd told me she was visiting her sister in Portland. More disturbing than the financial betrayal was a thread of evidence suggesting this affair wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. I found hotel charges in Seattle on weekends I'd been traveling for work. Restaurant receipts for 2 at intimate venues known for their romantic atmosphere. The timeline suggested the affair had been going on for at least 6 months, possibly longer. My phone continued to buzz with their calls, now joined by messages from mutual friends. "Stephanie's worried about you," wrote one. "Jake says there's been a misunderstanding," said another. I responded to none of them. Instead, I called the various wedding vendors we'd booked. The venue in Maui, the caterer, the photographer. Each conversation was brief and painful. "Personal emergency. Yes, I understand the deposits are non-refundable. No, we won't be rescheduling." I emailed my boss requesting a week of personal leave, which was approved without questions. Then I started looking for a new apartment. Something temporary just to get through the next few months while I figured out what my life would look like now. On day 3 of my self-imposed isolation, Jake appeared at my workplace, causing a scene in the reception area. My colleague Daniel texted me, "Your friend Jake is here making a fuss. Security is about to escort him out. Should I tell him where you're staying?" "No," I responded immediately. "Tell him nothing." That evening, I drove to my parents' house in Tacoma. I hadn't told them anything yet, not wanting to explain over the phone. My mother took one look at me standing on their doorstep and pulled me into a hug. "What happened?" she asked simply. I told them everything over dinner, my father's expression darkening with each detail. When I finished, he shook his head slowly. "I never would have expected this from either of them," he said. but especially not Jake. You've been friends for what, 6 years? Almost 7. I corrected automatically. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. What will you do now? I don't know, I admitted. I can't go back to the apartment knowing what happened there. I can't talk to either of them yet. I'm just processing. You know you can stay here as long as you need, she offered. I nodded gratefully, but knew I wouldn't accept. Running home to my parents at 32 wasn't the answer. I needed to face this on my own terms. As I was leaving, my father pulled me aside. Son, I know you're hurting, but remember who you are. Andrew's men handle adversity with dignity. Don't let them drag you down to their level. His words stayed with me as I drove back to the hotel. Dignity. Not revenge, not dramatic confrontations, but a measured response that preserved my self-respect. I began to form a plan. First, I booked a flight to Hawaii. Not the honeymoon package we'd reserved, but a simple, single traveler's vacation to Maui. If I'd paid for paradise, I might as well enjoy it alone. After 7 days of silence, I decided it was time to reclaim my space. I waited until I knew Stephanie would be at work, then returned to the apartment with 2 friends and a locksmith. We changed the locks and security code, then began the process of packing her belongings. I was meticulous, careful with her things despite everything. Clothes folded neatly into suitcases, toiletries gathered in boxes, personal mementos wrapped carefully. I found more evidence as I worked. A hidden folder on her laptop containing months of intimate messages between her and Jake. Receipts from hotels tucked into her jewelry box. A second phone I never knew about hidden in her underwear drawer. Each discovery should have hurt, but instead reinforced the rightness of my decision. This wasn't a momentary lapse, but a calculated deception maintained over months by the 2 people I trusted most. With her things packed and moved to a storage unit, I called Stephanie's parents. This was a conversation I dreaded, but one I couldn't avoid. Her father answered warm as always. Maxwell, good to hear from you. How are the wedding plans coming along? The question hit me like a physical blow. They didn't know. Of course they didn't. That's actually why I'm calling, sir, I said carefully. There isn't going to be a wedding. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then what happened? Is Stephanie okay? She's physically fine, I assured him. But I found her and Jake together last week. They've been having an affair for months. Another long silence. I see he finally said, his voice heavy. I'm sorry, son. That's not how we raised her. Stephanie's mother got on the line, then asking for details I was reluctant to provide. I kept it simple and factual. Yes, I was certain. No, this wasn't a misunderstanding. Yes, I had proof. What are you going to do? She asked finally. I've packed her things and changed the locks. I'll be sending an email to all the wedding guests explaining that the ceremony is canceled. We'll help with the costs you've incurred, her father offered unexpectedly. This is our daughter's mistake. You shouldn't bear the financial burden alone. Their support surprised and touched me. Thank you, but that's not necessary. It is to us, he insisted. It's the right thing to do. That afternoon, I composed a careful email to our guest list. No dramatic explanations or accusations, just a simple statement that the wedding was canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. I apologized for the inconvenience, especially to those who had booked travel. Then I texted Stephanie, we need to talk. Coffee bean on 4th. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., she responded immediately. Thank God, yes, I'll be there. The coffee shop was busy enough to ensure our conversation would remain civil. I arrived early, claiming a corner table with good visibility of the entrance. Stephanie appeared precisely at 10, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usually perfect makeup minimal. Maxwell, she breathed, sliding into the seat across from me. I've been so worried. Where have you been staying? Why haven't you answered my calls? I regarded her calmly. I think the reasons are obvious. About what you saw, she began, leaning forward. It was a terrible mistake, a moment of weakness. Jake and I were drinking, talking about the wedding, and things just happened. Things don't just happen, Stephanie. Affairs that last 6 months don't just happen. Her expression faltered. What are you talking about? I found the messages, the hotel receipts, the second phone. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Color drained from her face. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I countered, sliding a folder across the table. Here's a timeline I put together. Dates, locations, amounts spent from our joint accounts. 6 months of lying to my face while sleeping with my best friend. She stared at the folder without opening it. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. That might be the only honest thing you've said to me in months, I replied. You didn't mean to hurt me because you never thought I'd find out. Tears welled in her eyes. I still love you, Maxwell. We can work through this. Couples survive affairs all the time. We can get counseling, postpone the wedding, rebuild trust. The suggestion was so absurd I almost laughed. There's nothing to rebuild. You and Jake destroyed everything. It wasn't Jake's fault, she said quickly. I pursued him. He tried to resist. Stop. Just stop lying. I kept my voice low despite my rising anger. I've spoken with the wedding vendors. Everything's canceled. I've changed the locks on the apartment. Your things are in a storage unit. I slid a key and an information card across the table. The first month is paid for. After that, it's your responsibility. You're kicking me out, her voice rose sharply. You can't do that, I live there too. Your name isn't on the lease or mortgage, I reminded her. I've documented the financial irregularities too. The withdrawals from our joint account, the charges on my credit cards. Are you threatening me? Disbelief colored her tone. I'm stating facts. I've already spoken to your parents. That stopped her cold. You called my parents. How dare you? They deserve to know why the wedding was canceled. They've actually been very understanding. Your father even offered to reimburse me for the non-refundable deposits. Stephanie's expression cycled through shock, anger, and finally calculation. She reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back before she could touch me. Maxwell, please. I made a terrible mistake. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. We had something special. 3 years together, all our plans. Don't throw that away. I studied her face, searching for the woman I thought I'd known. That's the difference between us, Stephanie. I'm not throwing anything away. You and Jake already did that. I stood to leave. She grabbed my wrist. So that's it, you're just walking away. 3 years means nothing. It meant everything to me. I corrected her. That's why this hurts so much. But I won't be with someone who could betray me like this. I gently removed her hand and walked out, her tearful pleas following me. Outside, I took a deep breath of the cool Seattle air, feeling an unexpected lightness. The conversation had been difficult but necessary. A clean break. When I returned to the apartment, Jake was sitting on the steps outside looking as disheveled as Stephanie had. He jumped up when he saw me. Maxwell, thank God. Can we talk? Please. I considered walking past him, but decided this conversation was inevitable. 5 minutes. He followed me into the building, maintaining a respectful distance. In the elevator, he attempted conversation. New security code. I tried the old one. I didn't respond. Inside the apartment, I remained standing, making it clear this wouldn't be a lengthy discussion. Jake paced nervously. First, I want to say how sorry I am, he began. What happened was inexcusable. I betrayed your friendship in the worst possible way. Yes, you did. I never intended for things to go this far. It started innocently. Stephanie called me upset about wedding plans one night when you were working late. I went over to help. We had some wine, and I held up my hand. I'm not interested in the play-by-play, Jake. Nothing you say will change what happened or how I feel about it. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. What can I do? Tell me how to fix this. There's nothing to fix. Our friendship is over. My relationship with Stephanie is over. You both made your choices. It wasn't all my fault, he blurted out. Stephanie can be very persuasive. She told me you two were having problems, that you were distant, always working. She made it seem like you were already growing apart. I hadn't expected that. Are you saying she manipulated you? Jake looked conflicted. I'm not trying to pass the blame. What I did was wrong, period. But Stephanie isn't the victim here either. She told me things about you, private things that partners shouldn't share. She compared us constantly, usually not in your favor. The revelation shouldn't have hurt after everything else, but it did. Why are you telling me this now? Because I've lost my best friend, he said simply. And I want you to know the whole truth, not just the parts that make me look worse than I already am. The truth, I repeated. That's rich coming from either of you. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. He trailed off, looking around the apartment that held so many memories of our friendship. I needed to see you once more. To say I'm sorry to your face, even though sorry doesn't begin to cover it. For a moment I glimpsed the Jake I had known for years, the friend who had been there through college struggles and career victories. But that person was gone, replaced by someone I could never trust again. Your 5 minutes are up, I said quietly. He nodded, accepting the dismissal. At the door he turned back. For what it's worth, Maxwell, you deserved better. From both of us. As the door closed behind him, I felt the final threads of my old life severing. The future stretched before me, uncertain but undeniably mine to reshape. 6 months passed in a blur of focused rebuilding. I threw myself into work, earning another promotion and the opportunity to lead our company's expansion into the Asian market. The apartment was sold too full of tainted memories to remain comfortable. I found a smaller place closer to downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Puget Sound that helped clear my mind on difficult days. The Hawaii trip I took alone turned out to be unexpectedly healing. 5 days of hiking volcanic trails, swimming in crystal waters, and sleeping under the stars helped reset my perspective. I returned with a deep tan and a clearer sense of purpose. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reconnected when news of the canceled wedding spread. Thomas, my lawyer friend, introduced me to his hiking group, which became a weekend staple. My colleague Daniel invited me to a local basketball league, where I made connections outside the tech bubble. Therapy, something I'd always considered unnecessary, became an invaluable weekly commitment. Dr. Lydia helped me untangle the complex emotions of betrayal without becoming bitter. What happened to you was terrible, she said during our 3rd session. But it doesn't have to define your future relationships. At first, I scoffed at the idea of dating again. The thought of being vulnerable with someone new seemed impossible. But gradually the idea became less daunting. 3 months after the discovery, I accepted a dinner invitation from Rachel, a project manager from another department. The date was pleasant, if not earth-shattering. 2 weeks later, I had coffee with Allison, a friend of Thomas's wife. We connected over our shared love of obscure documentaries and went out twice more before agreeing we were better as friends. Each interaction helped rebuild my confidence, reminding me that not everyone was waiting to betray my trust. I approached these new connections with more awareness, watching for red flags I had previously ignored with Stephanie. Her impulsivity, which I'd once found exciting, now seemed like a warning sign. The small lies about insignificant things, which I'd dismissed as harmless, now appeared as practice for bigger deceptions. 4 months after our confrontation at the coffee shop, I ran into Stephanie at a restaurant downtown. I was having dinner with colleagues when she walked in with a group of friends. Our eyes met across the room and she froze momentarily before making a determined path toward me. "Maxwell," she said, her voice soft but eager. "You look good." "Thank you," I replied neutrally. "So do you." An awkward pause followed. My colleagues, sensing tension, excused themselves to the bar, leaving us alone. "How have you been?" she asked. "Good. Busy with work." "You." "Okay." She tucked her hair behind her ear, a nervous gesture I once found endearing. "I moved to a new place in Capitol Hill. Changed jobs, too." I nodded, unsure what response she expected. "Jake and I," she began, then stopped. That ended badly. Very badly. He wasn't who I thought he was. The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" she challenged, a flash of the old Stephanie emerging. "Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. It's just, I miss you, Maxwell. I think about you all the time, wonder how things might have been different. I don't," I said honestly. "I've made peace with what happened." Her expression fell. "Just like that, years together and you've moved on already." "Not just like that," I corrected her. "It took work, painful work. But yes, I've moved forward. She glanced at my colleagues waiting at the bar. Is one of them your new girlfriend? No, just coworkers. But you're dating. I considered lying to end the conversation, but opted for honesty. Occasionally. Tears welled in her eyes. I really messed up, didn't I? Threw away the best thing in my life. 5 months earlier, those words might have affected me deeply. Now they merely confirmed what I already knew. We both deserve to be happy, Stephanie. I hope you find what you're looking for. I rejoined my colleagues, ignoring her lingering presence. Later that night, a text arrived. Can we meet sometime? Just to talk. I didn't respond. Through mutual friends, I heard occasional updates about both of them. Jake had moved to Portland after a failed attempt to maintain his position at the marketing firm. The scandal of our broken friendship had rippled through our social circle, with most people taking my side once the truth emerged. Stephanie had indeed changed jobs, taking a step down to a smaller agency after being passed over for a promotion at her previous company. Their brief relationship had imploded spectacularly, I was told. A public argument at a popular bar, accusations thrown in both directions. Jake claiming Stephanie had pursued him aggressively. Stephanie countering that Jake had been obsessed with her for years. Both assertions probably contained elements of truth. I found I could think about them now without the sharp pain that had initially accompanied the memories. In its place was a sort of detached compassion. They had hurt me deeply, yes, but they had also hurt themselves. Their actions had consequences beyond just the pain they caused me. A year after the discovery, I met Natalie at a charity event for a coding program for underprivileged youth. She was one of the instructors, passionate about technology education and refreshingly straightforward. Our conversation flowed naturally, touching on everything from the ethical implications of AI to our shared love of hiking the Olympic Peninsula. When she gave me her number, I hesitated briefly, old fears surfacing. She noticed immediately. Bad breakup, she asked bluntly. Something like that, I admitted. Natalie nodded. Been there. How about this, we start as friends? Hike together sometime. No pressure, no expectations. The approach was so different from how my relationship with Stephanie had begun, all intensity and immediate connection. This felt healthier, more grounded. Our first hike led to a second, then a third. We took things slowly, building a foundation of trust through honest conversations and consistent actions. When I finally told her about Stephanie and Jake 6 weeks into our friendship, she listened without judgment. That must have been incredibly painful, she said simply. Thank you for trusting me enough to share it. Trust. That was the key difference. With Natalie, trust wasn't assumed but earned on both sides. I found myself opening up again, cautiously at first, then with increasing comfort. Looking back on the year since walking in on Stephanie and Jake, I recognize now that their betrayal, painful as it was, ultimately freed me from a relationship that was fundamentally flawed. The woman who could mock me in my moment of deepest hurt was not someone who truly loved me. The friend who could betray years of loyalty was not someone worthy of my trust. The experience taught me painful but necessary lessons. I learned the importance of maintaining my own identity within a relationship. With Stephanie, I had gradually molded myself to her preferences, overlooking small betrayals and dismissing my instincts when things felt wrong. I became aware of how I had ignored red flags, making excuses for behavior that should have raised concerns. Most importantly, I learned that reacting with dignity rather than vengeful rage was its own form of power. My father's words about handling adversity had guided me through the darkest moments. By refusing to be dragged into a messy, emotional war, I preserved my self-respect and ultimately found greater peace. If you've ever experienced betrayal by those closest to you, remember that your response defines you more than their actions ever will. The path forward isn't about forgetting or even necessarily forgiving, but about reclaiming your life and happiness on your own terms. Has someone close to you ever betrayed your trust? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming life's challenges, and share with someone who might need to hear that betrayal. Doesn't have to be the end of their story, but potentially the beginning of a better one. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.